request from a previous event. For those of you who are new, we do this on the second Wednesday of every month, right here at 6 o'clock. And so give you a quick agenda, talk about myself and the organization, give you some context. We'll go through 3 ways that people value business formally, and then a rule of thumb on how to value business using this term industry multiple. And then we have open mic. And so this is one of the big values here, isn't just listening to me talk about business stuff, but meeting the other entrepreneurially minded people in the community. And so I don't have a mic tonight, so we'll just be open. But folks who want to introduce yourselves, and you could talk about whatever. I got a new business idea, I'm looking to join something, I'm new to the community, I have some delicious salsa, please try it. Whatever you want to talk about, we're open to. But one of the things that comes out of this also is I'm going to ask you, what do you want to talk about next month? And so one of the things that we've been doing as a way of bringing entrepreneurial education to the community is by asking the community, what do you want? And that's how we ended up on this subject, and you'll see a myriad of others. So let me just talk briefly about this organization, the Southern Tier Startup Alliance. I'll actually come back to my bio. We are, in the simplest terms, the government. So at no point am I ever going to ask you guys for money. So that's, you can feel free, you're not here on some weird sales pitch, there's no duck and weave. I'm not going to, he might ask you for money for beer and wine, and I'm not going to ask you for that. And so the reason what we do and why we do it is around jobs. So when the government people are talking about jobs, we're one of those initiatives. And so the southern tier is defined by the governor are these 8 counties, and you see a couple stars there, including Monterey Falls. We've identified pockets of entrepreneurial activity. And you say, so why would the government want to support entrepreneurial activity as a job building growth? So what the peer-reviewed research shows is that the net new job growth in the United States comes from the new companies. And the most effective way to support those companies is by providing to them experienced and reliable mentorship early on in the company's formation. So let's help them. They find it's more efficient to help new companies grow than it is to backstop faltering companies. And so what they do is they hire folks like me and a few other people you'll meet. We act as mentors, and one of the things that the state gives in return is data. So I don't ever ask the entrepreneurs for money, but I do ask them for data. Now, in our first full year of operations, our target was to show that we had generated 34 new jobs. When we actually tallied up our numbers for 2015, we had interacted with 350 entrepreneurs throughout the region. Those companies had created 148 new jobs. They had raised $15 million in investment capital and another $5 million in grant money. So we have some nice numbers to show that we actually are helping people create jobs. The additional thing that the peer-reviewed research shows, and we're hoping to replicate, is that this is actually a money-generating thing for the government. So the idea being that over the trailing 10-year period, for every dollar that goes into programs like this, the government actually gets $38 back. And they do that by helping these companies create new jobs, and then those new companies pay taxes and their employees pay taxes. So this is ideally a program that not only it puts your taxpayer money to work now to create jobs and additional taxpayer down the road. So that's how we do it. It manifests itself in people, but also in resources. So one of the gentlemen here in the front, Alan Ray, represents one of the 5 incubators throughout the region. So if you have a need for special physical space, there's different flavors of it around the region, whether it be some high-tech space and some ceramics type equipment. We have some rapid prototyping stuff over in Ithaca. There's a biotech lab on Cornell's campus I was at earlier today. And there's a new facility opening up in downtown Binghamton. So other resources beyond people. So let me talk about this concept of an entrepreneur in residence. So there's 5 of us, we have different skill sets, and we are here as a resource to entrepreneurs to help entrepreneurs move their businesses forward in some meaningful way. So my background, I've started a couple companies. Most notably, my skill set in this group is creative financing. So one of the popular talks I give is called 13 Ways to Raise Money for Your Company That Aren't the Bank or Credit Cards. So one of the things that a company often needs is they need that capital to get going. And there are a lot of non-traditional funding sources that people may not be aware of. My most recent company, my investors call it the magically self-funding company, because we've kept finding other avenues to fund the business. The other area that I work a lot in is technology-driven companies. So a company that has some unique piece of technology that gives them a differentiated edge in the marketplace. How do I take that differentiated edge and turn it into not just a unique technology, but a business that solves the problems in a unique and better way? Next member of the team is Tony Fronteria. This is our marketing guru. So he spent 30 years in product marketing-driven businesses. And he's also faculty at Binghamton University. Oh, actually, yeah, I guess the other thing I do is I'm also faculty at both Cornell and Ithaca College over in Ithaca, teaching in the engineering school and the business school. So Ariana Blossom is our conflict specialist. So she has a background in executive coaching and conflict resolution. You can even see there she used to do something with WMDs. So talk about conflict. One of the things that we found is one of the things that causes entrepreneurs to get stuck is the other people in their company. Sometimes they're co-founders. And so resolving those conflicts in an amicable way to help the business move forward is a key thing we do. She also leads a special program we run around women entrepreneurs, particularly women CEOs. That's designed to help those women CEOs mentor other women CEOs. Ken Rother is our digital media and physical products guru. His most recent company, Tree Hugger, was acquired by Discovery Channel, so the Shark Week people. And he stayed on and actually grew their digital media presence to be the largest online digital media company in the world. He also has a passion and extreme knowledge in physical products. So what that means is, in our terminology, it's a thing with a brain. So if you hear that somebody talks about a smart toothbrush, a smart watch, there's a lot of interesting products. This also harkens back to upstate New York's legacy of doing manufacturing. The next generation of manufacturing is going to be smart things that do interesting things. And last but not least is Brian Bauer. Brian Bauer is actually our energy guru. He comes from 30 years of experience in the energy industry. One of the programs that he spearheads is called 76 West. It's the governor's $20 million clean energy initiative to encourage clean energy companies to start, grow, or relocate to upstate New York. So you may see some news over that. So one of the ways we work with the entrepreneurs in the community in two ways. One is things like this. So we provide an educational forum. Sometimes it's a lecture, sometimes it's a workshop. We also will work one-on-one with people on an as-needed basis. So we make ourselves available to entrepreneurs in the community and help them get unstuck, either from our experience, our connections, shoulder cry on, whatever it may be. That's what we provide. And I'd say at some point I've done all of the above. This is a bit of I'm glad this text is getting smaller. This is just a list of the talks that we've given to the community in the past, and we're happy to do again. So everything from how do I figure out if my business idea is a good one, to legal pitfalls, planning, design thinking, branding. The thing is, there's a lot of real estate that we can cover. We're happy to revisit this, but we're also happy to take suggestions. This list was generated by a group just like you guys over time. Each time I do one of these, I ask the audience, what do you want to talk about next? Okay, so that's the end of my information about us talk. I'm happy to take questions, but also here's all my contact information. I'm happy to give folks a card afterwards and the contact information of my peers. One way to find out about future events here, obviously these are all 6 p.m. on the second Wednesday, but there's also events around the region that you're invited to go to. The vast majority of them are free to attend, and they have different versions. Alan and I just did one this morning in Elmira, which was around hiring and retaining great employees. So 8 a.m. in Elmira was delightful. No, I teach. We had a nice group. It was fun. So yeah, we're working around the region, and folks are certainly invited to be a part of that. Okay, before I jump into the topic of the evening, any questions on any of this? All right, so let me jump into valuation. So this term valuation is, how do I value a business? And so this becomes a question a lot of times, particularly when people are looking to buy or sell a business. What is my business worth? And so I'm going to give you 3 common techniques that are calculatable, and I'll give you a technique that's a good rule of thumb, but it's not one that's commonly used for calculation. So we look at valuation not as a single technique, but actually 3 main techniques. So You often hear people talk about the 3 legs of the stool. And so the stool falls down if it doesn't have 3 legs. So anybody doing evaluation of a business actually should do all 3 of these. So it's not an either or, it's a let's do all 3 and see how they compare. So I'll start with the first one, which is the most straightforward. And this is asset value. So asset value, there's a reason I have a picture of a farm there. The asset value of sale price of a business is you take all the physical assets that are there, and if you were to sell them today, what would they be worth? So this is a common example. The reason I put a farm in there, if you said, what's that farm worth? One baseline is take all the cows, take the barn, take the tractor, this one for whatever reason, the windmills, take those. Product, inventory, right? So if you've got inventory in process, take all of that and add it up and say that's what the value of the business is. So the physical assets, sometimes you can also layer in physical, what we consider non-physical assets like intellectual property, if you have patents and stuff.
Accounts receivable?
Yeah, cash on hand and things like that. So it's getting into just what is the business worth. Cash on hand, inventory, accounts receivable, track out accounts payable, do that kind of mathematics. But it's just those physical things. Oftentimes you'll hear it is break it up and sell it. Yes, sir.
And you're trying to calculate those at best guess market value rather than book, right?
That's right. I mean, a simple way to think about it is if I were to put them on eBay, what price could I get? Right? And you know, there's a I wouldn't say an art to it. There's a process to it, but there's also some norms that typically accountants would use. So some things like a house would depreciate at a certain rate, whereas a car would depreciate at a different rate. So you can make some estimations, but it's a process of figuring out if I were to sell each one of these things individually, what would they be worth? Add that up, that's my asset value. So it's actually a relatively straightforward way to think about a business. This works really well for some types of businesses. It doesn't work particularly well for others, but it's usually where we start. So it's the simplest to explain, but it's not the only one. The next one is discounted cash flow. And this one is it's a bit of an MBA, a business school, don't show lingo, so I'm going to walk through this one a little slower. So discounted cash flow says, let me look at how much cash the business will generate over time, and then what if I were to have all that cash today? So just to give you a context, this is how Wall Street primarily values businesses. So let me explain how this works. There's a concept of the time value of money, and the time value of money says that a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. So the most visible manifestation of this is inflation. So inflation is 3%. And so if you were to say, okay, if I have a dollar today, I could have a dollar today or I could have a dollar from a year from now. Well, the buying power of a dollar from a year from now, discounted back today, is actually 97 cents. So a dollar today is worth more than a dollar a year from now. So that's inflation. So I just took 3% out of a dollar. So the further away a dollar is on the calendar, the less it's worth. And that's what the discount is. And so what we say is, how much cash is this business going to throw out? When I say throw off, like after we pay all of our expenses, just the profit. What is the profit of this business? And we'll just take this in a yearly chunk. In year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. Well, in this example I have here, it's a little blurry. I'm saying that the business makes $1,000 a year for the next 5 years. But I know a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow, so I've got to discount it to figure out what it's worth. In the example here, I use 5% as a discount rate, which, so $1,000 a year from now is only worth $952 today. That's discounting the cash flow. $1,000 2 years from now is worth $907. $1,000 3 years from now is $863. So you see how the further out a dollar is, the less it is worth in today's money. So it's essentially working inflation in half. So where this gets really complicated really fast is 2 ways. First is, what rate am I going to use? So floor would be 3%, that's inflation. I know inflation, so I'm not going to go lower than 3%. So then how high do I need to go? Well, you could say you could get reasonably good returns between 5 and 8% in an investment in the stock market if you were to pick a S&P 500 portfolio. So maybe I make that discount 8%. Or, depending on the needs of the buyer, they may set it even higher. So I know Corning has a really high hurdle rate, so they may set something like this at 10 or 15. So it actually has a lot to do with the needs and the other options of who's building this model. I've raised money from the venture capital world. So these are people who invest in high growth potential, privately held companies. Things like, if you guys seen Mark Cuban, folks like that on the Shark Tank, a non-unusual hurdle rate or discount rate for somebody in that world is 40%. So a really big number. So what does that mean? So that's the first thing. The first thing that'll change is that discount rate. And it could vary between two people depending on what other investment opportunities they have. The second thing that moves is you're predicting a future revenue, future earnings. And so you're having to predict what a future earnings is going to look like. And so mapping out, this business right here is actually not a great business because they're only making $1,000 a year for the next 5 years. It works for this equation, but we actually want to see businesses that increase their revenues or their profits. So we say, well, gosh, what would this look like if my profit was $2,000 in year 2, $3,000 in year 3, $4,000 in year 4? So now what you have is you're having to predict future earnings. And so this model can get complicated really fast because you say, okay, what are my predicted future earnings and what discount rate do I need to get? Put those two together and I can calculate, by adding these up, a value for today's business. You guys follow me? So this is a relatively straightforward math equation that gets complicated super fast and based on a lot of assumptions. Okay, you guys with me on this one? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is discounted cash flow. This is the way Wall Street operates. And this is why when you hear things on Wall Street like earnings projections changed, they're changing those future numbers and calculating a value for today's stock based on it. Because the way Wall Street works is they work on this valuation model, and then the price of the stock is very simply the value of what the business is worth today divided by the number of shares. That's my stock price. And so while one person may be a buyer and another person may be a seller, is what model they have created and what their return rate requirement is. Okay, good. The third leg of the stool is what we call comparables or ratios. And so comparables this is actually based on a concept of the wisdom of the market. And by that we say, let's look at similar deals and see how close we are to those other similar deals. And if those deals are priced at a certain way, I can be priced in a certain way. So you look at similar companies that have either raised money from investors or better yet are publicly traded on the market where you can get their valuation and say, how am I similar to those businesses? And then I say, okay, well this company was, we'll pick a number, is traded at 2 times revenue. So its revenue is for this math we'll say 2 times revenue, so they're $1 million company, so they're selling for $2 million. So I'm a company that does $100,000 in revenue, so my company's worth $200,000. So this is what we mean by finding these ratios. Sometimes they're revenue ratios, sometimes they're earnings ratios, sometimes they're other business metrics. So we could use the cafe here as an example. You may say, let's just for shits and giggles say, the cafe over in Watkins Glen recently sold for a number, and they had 100 people come through the door each day. And if we say the cafe gets 20 people through the door each day, we could say the value of this business is comparable to that one. And a lot of these kind of things are done on a regular basis. An example I saw when I was in the industry was when Sprint and Nextel got sold. They figured out the price based on the value of each customer, and then other companies based it on their sales on that. So they figured out that each telephony customer was worth $51. And then when other transactions occurred, they used that same baseline metric for valuing the company. I've seen some wacky ones. I assume companies get valued on the number of engineers they employ.